Sure. And by doing an FBI agent, you escape some of the nitty-gritty police procedural
Yes.
everyday details, right?
Right.
I mean, they do have procedures, but they're a lot more flexible. They
Yes.
expand.
Yes.
So I think you avoided, I mean, I've always thought that was a disadvantage of writing a police story, was that you were kind of confined by the cop shop and the very
Right.
nature of the cop shop. I mean, Michael Connelly, you know, your colleague in LA,
Yes.
tries very hard through Harry Bosch to kind of expand or, in fact, rebel against the cop shop, but it's always there, and that creates a tension with Harry, you know, in his job. But I think that it is interesting to have a more flexible FBI gal doing this. I was interested too. I expected for some reason when I picked up Be the One, and I always ignore all the stuff that comes with the book.
Yeah.
I've gotten to the point where I don't want my reading of a manuscript to be affected by the package and the hype. That's part of that Hollywoodization. That's,
Sure.
I don't want to hear who you are. I
Yeah.
want to know what you wrote, and then if, you know, then I'll find out who you are. But I truly expected it to be Anna Gray because she was such a great character, and I opened it up and I thought, who's this person? So I guess the question before we move on to Cassidy is, where's Anna? Is she going to come back?
Anna is coming back, and for all the fans who've been asking me for the past 5 years, where's Anna Gray? She's in process. It will be my next book. I'm writing it fast, and she's going to be alive and well. We're going to pick up pretty much where North of Montana left off.
Well, that was the question I was going to
Yeah.
ask for you. Even though there has been the time gap between the books, obviously it'll be 6 or 7 years. I assume real time, I assume in fiction time, Anna's not going to be but a very little bit older.
Right. No, we're not. I'm not going to jump her ahead in life. Yeah. Although you know, interestingly, in the amount of time since I wrote North of Montana, the FBI offices and so forth have been completely transformed. The technology is completely different. The look is completely different. But that'll be fun to play with, you know, in the book. But Anna will sort of be just taking the next couple of steps in her career.
Well, I think that works really well, although you certainly make a great point about the technology. I have noticed recently that one has to account for cell phones. I was watching, my husband and I were watching the original Thomas Crown Affair.
Yes.
And all of that stuff, you know, with the guy trying to get into the phone booth, you know, to check in and all. And,
Right.
and of course, your impulse today is to say, you know, so where's the cell phone and the whole bit? And things that used to work in stories.
Yeah.
I'm really sad to having to let go of that great lost era plot.
Oh,
You know,
yeah.
the Tichborne claimant and all that
Yeah.
stuff, because now with DNA, I mean, it doesn't, you know, it doesn't work that way anymore.
Correct.
And I think that some of these, you know, great situations you used to be able to get characters into in crime fiction are, because of forensics and other sorts of technology, are kind of disappearing on us. So I guess you will have to take that into account. Did you read Sue Grafton's O is for Outlaw?
Haven't read that yet.
Well, the reason I ask is she has an essay at the beginning or the end. I didn't think it's actually part of the novel, but rather a prefatory essay, in which she says she's deliberately keeping Kinsey in early 1980s because she doesn't want to deal with cell phones and, you know, this other kind of technology. She wants Kinsey still to be a private eye, more of the old school. And so she'd almost rather look backward. In fact, O is for Outlaw looks back into Kinsey 20 years before.
Oh,
so you're
right.
really now back into the early 70s or late 60s or something. And I think that's a good point, you know,
Yes.
if you don't want to have to sort of lose some of the ambiguities that you were able to get before technology eliminated them, you do have to kind of work in an older time frame.
Which I think is great for readers. I think it's comforting
Do you
to be in
notice
that
how
time
many
frame.
books have gone back to World War II since the Cold War went down? I mean,
Yeah, well, that's a real problem for spy novels.
yeah, but you know, there have been some absolutely great books about echoes of World War II. John Katzenbach's Heart War. Heart's War was fabulous. There are books about, you know, art treasures, where they belong, or the Swiss bank thing or whatever. I mean, you're getting a new view of World War II, I think. But I also think people are mining that because you can dodge some of the stuff we're talking about.
That's right.
Plus, of course, it's, you know who the good and the bad guys are, so
Yeah.
it's a little bit easier. Well, anyway, one of the other things I wanted to mention before we moved on to Be the One, or to ask you, I thought that your history, you've made Los Angeles a main character in the book, and I thought that all of your evocation of LA, the history of your district and so forth, really lent a lot of texture to North of Montana and made it fascinating. Is this a subject that you're just naturally interested in?
I am interested in buried levels, and so yes, I'd like to know what's underneath what's behind, you know, that mini mansion, what was the house that was there before, who were those people, what's the innate character of the neighborhood. And so, yes, I think Los Angeles is a character in my novels. And like any character, you need to know backstory, and you need to develop that backstory. And it just only enriches your current story to know where it all came from.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, I use it very intentionally.
Good. I thought there was a real Chandler-esque aspect, you know, to it.
Thank you.
Well, I didn't say that lightly because I'm a serious Chandler fan, but I always think Michael Connelly did a talk for us in 1996. We had a conference with current crime writers talking about masters of the genre from the past, and Michael's was Raymond Chandler. And we went in some detail through some passages in, I think, The Big Sleep about L.A., you know, when he was writing things like, you know, the jacarandas were in bloom and whatever.
Right.
And, you know, no matter how dated Chandler is, and it is, I mean, the slang, some of it, the racial stuff is hard to read today. A lot of things about it, he wasn't even always a great plotter. We don't know, you know, why the chauffeur killed somebody in The Big Sleep. Even Ray didn't know. But that stuff holds up. Everything he wrote about L.A., you know, all these descriptive passages, and Michael pointed out he can still see that.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that stuff hasn't really changed 70 years, 60 years later.
True, it hasn't. Yeah, I think Chandler was plugging into sort of the more eternal aspects of LA, you know, which in our perception becomes very dreamlike, very almost like icons, which is very satisfying for us to find again to be true, to continue to be true. It's one of the reasons you keep coming back to Chandler, because of a sense of security. Some things haven't changed, and underneath all the development and so forth, there's still that tree and that bit of air and that sunset that defines where you live.
Mm-hmm. What did you think of Bob's evocation, especially in L.A. Requiem, which I think was like a paean to Los Angeles?
Oh, yeah. Well, you know, I'm a big fan of his. He's also flawless about it. You know, he gives you a sense of the pace of it, the pulse of it, the kind of weariness of it, you know. But I also think in Demolition Angel, he finds a whole fresh way to see the city, amazingly enough. And you talk about procedurals. Well, in Demolition Angel, he really uses the technology to tell a story. The technology is almost a character in that book too.
You mean the whole bomb squad?
The bomb squad stuff, and it goes to the mystery. How that bomb is constructed becomes the central mystery of the book, which I think is brilliant. So there are all kinds of ways to reinvent these forms.
Well, there are, and it's also fascinating to look at one city from so many different perspectives.
Yeah.
I mean, each of you seems to have, you know, elements. I mean, you all share elements, but each of you really has a unique vision. And it is interesting that it changes so much with the protagonist. As you say, Bob, Joe, and Elvis are doing, you know, one thing. It's one LA.
Right.
And then zip, we get into, my mind's gone blank, the name of the woman in the bomb squad.
Right. I'm blanking too, because it's contagious.
Oh,
you
good.
know.
Well, it's not just me. Maybe
Forgive
it's the heat.
us, Bob.
Yeah, sorry, Bob. That's all right. Don't forgive me. But anyway, it, as you say, it changes so much because she has a whole different persona and a whole different, well, different eyes, different ways of looking at things. And I'll be interested to see when he shifts back. In fact, he's doing a standalone next year, which won't be either. And then I think he's shifting back to Elvis and Joe. It'll be interesting to see how all these different voices, you know, go into play. And I will say that while I was for a moment, on page 1, let me say, disappointed I wasn't reading Anna Gray, I really got into Cassidy right away, and I thought how very different Be the One was from North of Montana. What was your impulse? Well, let me ask you this. Why was it so long between books? Was it because you were so busy back in television?
It was a combination of factors. I wanted to write Be the One for a long time. It was a difficult book to write. It took a lot of research. Be the One takes place in the world of baseball,
right?
And high stakes finance in downtown Los Angeles. And I spent 5 years basically in and out with the Dodger organization, learning what goes on behind the scenes of the game.